Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Everquest Old School. And tonight I am playing my Cleric, and he is level 19, and we are over in Unrest again. Now, I know you guys are probably sick of this room, and it does get somewhat tedious at times, but I am so close to getting to the next room. At level 20 to 21, I should be able to go upstairs into the fire pit room. And that's going to be a whole new set of mobs, hopefully, and just a new experience. So I'm really wanting to get those 2 levels. And over here in Unrest, it really doesn't take very long. I mean, I'll show you what my experience is at. We're going to go through these, I would say probably about a bubble every 20 to 35 minutes. Probably not even that if the group is doing really well, which they are tonight. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. And I can't wait because we've been kind of playing some of our ults recently, and I do enjoy that. I do enjoy going back to some of the low-level zones that I never went to, or that it's been a very long time since I've seen them and get to explore them again for the first time. But, I do want to get to some of the higher-level zones, like Lower Guck and Solus B. Those 2 zones in general, I spent I don't know how many hours in those, and because at the time it capped out at level 50, there was nothing you could really do. You couldn't really go anyplace else because those were the in-game dungeons other than, raiding. So I was very thankful to to actually spend as much time as I did there and get as much good loot as I could, because now with all the expansions that are out, and things of that sort, not a whole lot of people go there as much as they used to. And on this server, I'm kind of hoping that they're still kind of busy, and from what I've seen, they're still pretty much camped all the time. And I'm hoping it will stay that way. But Velius is coming out here pretty soon, and they've been talking about that for quite a long time, so I'm not holding my breath that it's going to come out when they say it's going to come out. I think they've been talking about it for like 2 years now. But when that comes out, I think some of these older zones may die off a little bit, dial down the numbers, because everybody's, especially when it first comes out, everybody's going to rush over there to try the new content and basically get really good armor. Because that's one thing that I've said before in other episodes, where in these MMOs, they always seem to try to, one-up themselves. And so when a new expansion comes out, it pretty much makes the old expansion, I won't say obsolete, but not quite as good as it was before. Because all the armor in the new expansions always seem to be better than all the stuff in the previous game. And I think that's a mistake. I think that's a mistake to do it that way, because now none of the old zones are really part of the game, because nobody goes to those anymore, because there's not any loot there. And if people who are concerned about loot don't go to those zones, then people who are concerned about just grouping and getting experience can't find groups in those zones, because half of the population is no longer there anymore. So it's like a domino effect. One thing affects the other. So my idea would be to find out what the best loot is in the game as programmers. And you may have put 10 or 15 really good items in one zone, and people just love that zone and they love the items. If you could take those items after the game has come out and after people have settled down and decided that those are the best items in the game, take those items from those mobs and move them to another zone. Spread it out so that there's reason to go to the 10 or 15 other zones that are out there, rather than condense so much so in just one zone. Because the game is huge, and you should be able to experience all of it without spending all your time in one zone, because that's where every single piece of armor for every class that you want drops. That's a shame, because then everybody's going to be there, and there's not going to be a room for everybody, and all the other zones just get overlooked. And it's kind of sad, because somebody took the time. In fact, probably not just one person. It was probably a lot of people took the time to make that zone and design it, test it, make sure everything's working. And like Kedge Keep, for example, if it wasn't for the fact that people had to go there for their epics, I don't really think anybody would ever group in that zone. It's not a zone that people really frequent that often, because one, it's off of the beaten path, a little bit further away than most, and it's just one of those zones that gets overlooked. And if there was something really special there, other than the epic, if there was a really good piece of equipment there that drops, I think more people would go out there just for that piece. And if it was already camped, they may stick around a little bit longer in hopes of, getting another group somewhere else. They could get a little bit of experience until that spot opens up. And before long, before you know it, the whole group or the whole zone is camped with people, and it becomes a very lively and populated zone, and it's fun because, as you can see here, if you spend too much time in one area, you're gonna get tired of it. You're gonna learn it backwards and forwards, and that's a good thing. But you're gonna get tired of it, and so you do want to go out and experiment and try new places. And if nobody's there, like I said before, that just kind of sucks. Unless you like soloing. If you love soloing, then you can go to those offbeat zones and not really have any problem whatsoever. Hold on a second. Death beetle running through. I don't know where that death beetle came from. The death beetles are only out there in the courtyard. So the fact that somebody brought one in here is unique because they're not usually brought in, and the courtyard is completely camped tonight. In fact, I was talking about it earlier to a friend of mine that there's somebody in here about an hour and a half ago. He finally left, but he was here for about an hour and a half running around the courtyard while I was sitting here waiting to get into this group. And he was a high-level druid, and he had another character with him. I don't know if it was his or a friend or if somebody was paying him to do it, but he came in here and he pulled the entire courtyard for himself and then power leveled that guy. I don't have a problem with that per se because, it's part of the game. If you're able to do it, then you should be able to do it, is my thinking. But he pulled the whole courtyard when tonight, out of almost every night that I've been on, it has the most people on. And there's actually 3 groups camping the courtyard, which is probably 2 groups too many. We had one on the left, one on the back, and one in the very back. Not one in the back. One on the left, one on the right, and one in the back. Sorry, guys. And so this guy came in and he pulled the entire courtyard from all 3 groups. There wasn't that much up because they were keeping it down pretty good. But when he came through, they weren't even able to get those few ones, and it just kind of ruined it because one guy was taking all the experience away from 3 groups. That's 18 people who aren't getting any experience anymore because one guy wanted to power level another guy, and it seems like poor taste. I mean, you can do it, nothing wrong with it. I can't say anything negative about it because, again, it is part of the game, but it just seems like you could have gone to a different zone, or you could have come into this zone when there wasn't as many people on, and that would have been, more respectful to the other players because they're spending their time. They not only logged on, but they put a group together, which is hard enough in its own right. And then they actually made the group work, make an experience, camp in a little area, doing pretty well. And then some higher level guy comes in and kind of ruins it for them. It ruins the momentum that they got going on. And you got to remember that you're not the biggest fish in the sea. There's always somebody else bigger. And so you can do anything you want, but it's going to come back to haunt you one day. And, it's going to suck because some other high-level guy is going to come over there and kill steal your name because you were being a bunhole about it. So, yeah, I would definitely, if you're going to consider doing power leveling, my advice would be go to a zone that's not very frequent. The zones that I was just talking about, like Najina, places that people don't normally go to, Kedge Keep. Go in there and power level. Now, you may not get the bonus experience that you would get from Unrest or Mistmore, so I can understand wanting to come here. I mean, it's a tempting target because you get a lot of experience here, but it just seems, like I said, greedy to take that experience away from so many different players just to give it to so few. But what is it? Small ringmail belt. What do I got as a belt? I got the same thing, I think, almost. Yeah, it's about the same thing, except that one weighs less than mine. Same people can use it? Almost. Mine, human, barbarian, half-elves, high-elves, druids, not druids, dark elves, Iskars, they can all use this, but theirs is a few less. I'm going to keep mine, just because more people can use it. When I finally upgrade, I can give it to, that many more people. Or at least have that many more people who could use the item that I could give it to. Go on belt, thanks though. I gotta pick them up, too heavy. They are heavy. Any bronze materials that you pick up, whether it's van bracers or your leggings or especially the breastplate, they weigh quite a bit, and they're gonna weigh you down as far as your actual weight limit goes. In fact, my guy right now, just having armor alone, not any backpacks, nothing in the backpacks, just having armor alone, he's overweight. Now, that's not always going to be the case. As you progress through the game and you get better and better armor, most of the armor you get as a cleric will have a few stats here and there with an extra strength or two. and that's going to come in handy. I mean, it's not really going to do very much for your character-wise, but it's going to allow you to carry more stuff, which is just a nice little bonus. You're not going for strength, but it tended to be, from what I remember anyways, that most of the items you get had a high wisdom and then a couple points of strength as well. So, you know, I was fine with that if I had those on there. And in fact, some of the time I would actually go off and have like a backpack full of items that I could put on that give me extra strength. And the reason behind that would be is if I'm sitting in a group long enough, there were times where I would literally get up at the end of the group. I wouldn't even be able to move because I was so heavy, so weighed down with coins because I was sitting there for so long, and somebody had auto split on. And if you got, you know, 400, 500, 600 platinum on you, that's a lot of money. You're not going to destroy that, but that money can weigh you down quite a bit. And so there would be times, wow, he got a werebat. Wow, he had to go get that one from pretty far away. Hold on, let me heal these people up. This one, somebody took a big hit there. Now I have got my level 19 spells. I went back to town to get those off camera, mainly because it's such a long run. And as I was running, I kind of thought maybe I should record this because some of you guys may want to see that. But overall, it really wasn't that interesting. I had to go through all the spells and make sure I didn't miss anything because, you know, I did miss something the last time. At level 5, I didn't have enough money to buy all my cure spells, so I didn't buy the cure disease, or what was the other one? Let me look. Let me go back. I didn't buy cure disease or cure blindness. Now, blindness usually does not last very long, and most people won't ask you to cure it. But there's a few mobs in the game that you will want to use that on. So it's always a good idea to have all your spells, regardless of whether you use them that often or even at all. Because there's going to come a point where you're probably going to want to use that. And when it comes to raids, that's usually where it's going to come into play. Raids will have you use spells that you never used any other time in the game. And, you know, you could have, if you knew what you were doing and you knew how those spells worked and you were familiar with it. Because usually, people will start going to raids not really knowing all that much. You know, they're decent players, but they're not great. And then they start going on raids, especially poolers. You know, the poolers will learn hands down more than any other character during raids, because pooling, I believe, is the single linchpin in whether you're going to complete the raid or not. Now, there's other factors. There's a lot of other factors to take into account, but if you're going to go to like Plane of Fear or the Plane of Hate, especially the Plane of Fear, pooling is one of the most vital things. If you don't know how to pool, or you don't have a set of good poolers to chain pool, breaking in that zone or getting into that zone is going to be a nightmare. So you definitely want to have people who are familiar with the zone to train other people. But if you don't, you're going to be learning a whole lot, and it's going to take you a long time. You're going to have a lot of deaths. You're going to have a lot of rezzing and buffing and a lot of mistakes to be made, and you may not even finish the zone at the end of the night. It may just be, you know, I've been on raids like that when the zone first came out. You know, you'd go over there to check it out, and you know, you spend 8 hours fighting there, and the group just never could quite get it right. Something kept happening. Somebody would cast something at the wrong time. One of the poolers would keep making a mistake. It wouldn't always be the same person, but it would always happen. And, you know, 8 hours later, after you've killed, you know, a handful of mobs, and everybody's like, okay, we're tired, it's gone, you know, 4 hours past what we thought it was going to go, and nobody's really gotten anything, you'd call it quits. But you did learn something, and it always seemed to be the next time you came was a little bit easier. The next time you came, everybody was prepared. They knew what to expect. The first time you go, you don't know anything. You don't know what to expect. You don't know that it's going to take like 6-7 hours. Sometimes less. If you get into a really good guild who's very familiar with the zone and has been there tons and tons of times and very outfitted, you can do those zones very quickly. But if you're going to go for the very first time, it's going to be a long, long raid for you guys. And yeah, just people don't know what to expect when they go in. And so it takes a couple of raids like that where they do badly for people to understand the seriousness of when they tell you to do something, you need to do it right then and there. You don't need to argue. You don't need to ask questions. You need to do it. And it's not a power trip. It's the fact that they've done it before. And they are more than happy most of the time to explain to you why you need to do what you need to do, just not during the raid, because the raids are long enough as it is. So any questions you have, write them down as the raid goes on. And after the raid is over, or the next day, usually the next day, because after the raid's over, pretty much everybody's exhausted, depending on how long it took. Some people will actually do 2 or 3 raids in a night, and so they're not exhausted after one raid, but they do their raids very efficiently, and they're very good at it. So, but again, I'm talking about people who are still just getting into it and don't know, how to pull. They don't know how to position mobs. Positioning mobs, for those of you who are not familiar with that term, when you pull a creature into a room, what you really want to do is turn that mob, if you're the pooler or the tank, turn that mob away from the group. A lot of mobs will have, I won't say a lot of mobs, but there's mobs out there who have AE frontal spells. So if you're facing, or if he's facing the group, or whoever's in front of him will get hit by that AE spell. So if you turn the mob away from the group, the healers and the wizards who are sitting down don't have to worry about getting hit. The rogues and the people who backstab don't have to worry about constantly trying to turn around the mob, because you're doing that for them. You're turning it around for them. Plus all the people who are in your group who may not even know that you do more damage hitting in the back than you do the front. So whether you're a backstabber or not, if you're using your melee spell or your melee weapon, you want to be behind him, hitting him. Because they, again, if you turn around to run away, they do more damage to you on the back. So it's the same thing for them. Just keep that in mind, guys. So you want to position the mob facing away from the group. You also want to worry about the positioning, the actual spot you park the mob on, because in some zones, especially raid zones, that's a very vital piece to the puzzle, because either one, if he's too close to other creatures, when he uses some of his area effect spells, he may aggro other mobs because he's close enough to them. Also, you got to keep in mind that when you burn the creature down to a certain point, he may decide to run. And having him in a certain spot before he starts to run may be very good for you as far as the pathing goes. If he can go down a certain path that you guys are familiar with, that you know is clear, that's better than, say, pulling it over to your group, which is more convenient, but then when he decides to run, he runs in a direction that you would prefer him not to, and it's going to get ads and things of that sort. So, yeah, positioning is a very important key. So is, the fatigue death, pooling and chain pooling, but that's a whole conversation in its own right that I will get into as we level up our Shadow Knight. And I'm kind of thinking about making a monk, but I want to wait on the monk. They're coming out with another server here sometime where they start over the server basically from 1999, and because they're going to come out with Velius here pretty soon, and so they're going to come out with one where it starts over. I kind of want to make a character on there. I'm going to keep these guys. I'm going to continue playing these guys, but I kind of want to make at least one on that server. And I was thinking about playing a monk on that one, because a monk, from what I hear, can be very, very good at soloing. I never played a monk back in the day, so I don't know firsthand, but he can be very good at soloing from what I hear, and he's supposed to be pretty fun to play. And the fact that I love pooling as well kind of wants me to try out a monk, because the Shadow Knights, as much as I love them, and I really, really want to level up mine, I want to try out a fatigue death that doesn't suck, right? Because theirs sucks. Theirs failed so many times. It wasn't very useful unless you really knew the zone. I don't know if they changed it. I think they have tweaked it a little bit, but it used to be if you knew the exact right spot to fall down on, it never would fail. But if you did it in a weird spot, or while you were running, always seemed to be the key for me. If I was running, it would fail, so I actually had to come to a complete stop, cast the spell, hope that they didn't interrupt it or move me too much from where I was casting. Then it would go off, and hopefully it would be pretty good. We haven't gotten to the point where we can use Fatigue Death on our Shadow Knight, so I don't know if it's going to be the same way. But yeah, it took a skill, almost a art form in its own right, for the Shadow Knight to be a very effective pooler, but it was possible, and I got pretty good at it. This is why I kind of want to play the monk, because if I can get good with the Shadow Knight, I think I could do pretty well with a monk whose Fatigue Death almost never fails from what I see in videos that I watch. And yeah, they're really, really cool. So I think we'll do that one day. I don't think it's going to come out anytime soon. I know Velius is supposed to come out here on the 30th, I think is the day. But I'm not holding my breath, because it was supposed to come out, I think, like 15 times before, for the last like 2 years or something like that they've been talking about it, and it hasn't quite come out. There's always been little delays and things of that sort. So If it comes out, we're definitely going to go over there and check it out. If it doesn't, I'm not going to be disappointed. There's plenty of things I can do on this continent, in the meantime. And in fact, I kind of hope it doesn't, because there's still a lot of zones I want to check out before they dial down a little bit. Like I said before, especially Lower Guck and Solus B. Those were zones. I can still picture them in my mind when I say their names. I picture a certain couple of rooms in each one of those zones, and I remember sitting there for 6-7 hours at a time playing that game, because I played back when I was 16, 17, and I was playing football and I was working at the movie theater, and we wouldn't get out till about 12. The last showing was at 9, and you had to clean up and do all that other stuff, and then go to the bank and get all that done with. And then I would head home, and I would get home around 12 to 1 o'clock, and I would play till about 5 in the morning the next day, sometimes a little bit later, and then I would get up and go to school. I wouldn't get any sleep. I'm not one of those people who, back when I was a kid anyways, who needed that much sleep. Now I love my sleep. I'll sleep in on the weekend if I can, all day till like 3, 4 in the afternoon if I'm able to do it. It doesn't happen too often, but I definitely enjoy my sleep now. But back then I didn't need it, and my grades were fine. I was always an A/B student. My grades never slipped, and I was still playing football and still doing well there, and I was still going to work, and I was still doing fine there. So I wasn't one of those people who let the game take over my life as far as everything started to slip. But I definitely saw those type of people who did have that happen to them, and I can understand how that would if school wasn't so easy for them. I never really had to study, and I did just fine, because I think the schools back then were pretty pathetic as far as what they actually taught. So it didn't really take all that much. You just had to be not completely stoned all the time or something when you went to school, and you should have been able to pick it up just sitting there in the class. But yeah, I did pretty well there, and it's just one of those things that you can spend so much time playing this game before you realize that you had been sitting there for 7 hours, and it was fun. You had a blast doing it. You thought back on your day, what you had done, and oh yeah, do you guys remember that quartz run, or that that raid boss guy that we went to and killed, or you would talk about it for the week, depending on what you guys had did as a guild together or as friends, and it brought you together. It was that community that a lot of us didn't have in our real life. For me, I'm not a very social person in real life. I don't seek out groups. I don't seek out large gatherings of people. I don't do too well in those. I mean, I can get up on stage and I can talk if I have to. I don't enjoy those situations, is what I'm saying. Other people out there do, and they usually do pretty well in situations like schools or hold on a second, guys. I'm gonna there we go. Did it resist? It resisted us. There we go. No, I'm rooted. Suck. Let me go ahead and sit back down. Let me see, what did they say? Someone stole my pool. Who are they talking to? Main. Okay, so I can finally move. Sorry guys, I was just looking down in the text to make sure they weren't talking to me. As you guys watch my episodes, you'll realize that I don't pay attention nearly as much as I should to what's going on. I am sorry for that. I do apologize for anybody who's ever been in one of my groups and noticed that about me. As we get higher and higher level, I'll probably start recording these episodes ahead of time and then coming back in and adding narration to it, because I don't know if I can do narration why we are having really difficult time in a certain zone. So if you guys want to hear me just have a hard time in the zone and concentrate on the group and just kind of be a fly on the wall, let me know. But if you want to have me still do these narrations over that, so you guys don't hear whether it's vent chat or Skype chat with the group, let me know that too, and I'll do either or. Maybe I'll do both, I'm not sure yet. But for now, I'm just sitting here playing, having a good conversation with you guys, and reminiscing about the past, because I think that's one of the main reasons people come back to the server, is the good times they used to have, or the good times they heard other people had. Some people missed out the first time this game came out. It just, if my friend hadn't given a copy of this game to my brother, I don't know if I would have got into it right away. I mean, it's definitely a game that is right up my alley, and definitely one that would have appealed to me at the time if I had heard about it, and I definitely would have wanted to try it. But I don't know if I would have gotten it that year, or if it would have been a couple of years before, I would have gotten introduced to it. Because as I was a big gamer and I loved playing games, I wasn't one of those people who kept up to date on everything coming out. So it really was word of mouth, for me anyways, what I would go out and buy. A friend of mine would come to school and be like, hey, did you see the new Command & Conquer game that just came out? And I'd go over to his house. Yeah, that's right, guys. We would actually go over physically to our friend's house. We wouldn't do it on the computer or online with the game systems. Didn't have anything like that. If you wanted to see what he had or play it, you had to go over to his house. And I would go over to their house and sit there and see them play these games or play them myself and be like, that's cool. I'm definitely going to get that. And then you had to go find a store that had that game. It's not like nowadays where you go on to Amazon, or you can go, man, I'm making myself sound old, where you can go down to the computer store and get any game that's possibly out there now. You had to go down to like a Pacific store, and there were far and few in between that did it back then, and see if they had your game. A lot of the time, if it was one of those weird ones that wasn't like a big budget title, and that's back then, which didn't really have a lot of big budget titles, they had to order it for you. It's almost like a bookstore had to order it for you. So yeah, it was a different atmosphere. And so when this game came out, if you guys want to see why we rant and rave about how this game made an impact on us, go back to 1999, or type that in to the don't go back. If you have a time machine, yeah, go back. No, go on Google and go back to 1999 and look at the other games that are coming out. Look at hold on a second. Incoming. No idea. I'm not in the front row. Okay, so somebody went AFK and never came back. Okay, so they booted him. But yeah, if you go and look at the other games that came out that year, you'll see the graphics on those games, and they're not nearly as good as these. They're pretty horrible in retrospect, if you look at the graphics they had. And so you can just imagine how amazed we were when this thing came out. A 3D game that you can interact with, and your characters look different. Even in today's game, one of the things that you don't see as much as you should is the fact that when you get armor or weapons of sorts, you actually get to see them on your character. They show up as a graphic. This was almost unheard of back in the day because it was so hard to create a graphic for every little piece of armor, and the fans would notice if you just took like 2 or 3 graphics and just copied and pasted them over and over again. And so you did have to change them up. It could be a different color with the same texture, but it had to be something different. Otherwise, people would just rip you for trying, but not really, and it's just an insult. And so when this game came out, you had that, in 3D, which was amazing. And then you had all these different classes that had their own unique playthrough, and there was no instructions, and I think that was the coolest thing. That's one thing that I don't think we can really get back, is the times where I would log on and I would talk to a friend or I talk to a guildmate, and he'd be like, guy, you know what? I went over and explored in Butcher Block, and I found an entrance to another zone I'd never seen before. Or I was traveling around, Corner's Castle, and I ran across a named guy no one on the server has seen before. And the only way you knew about that named guy, the only way anybody ever found out about that named guy, is by word of mouth. That's the only way to do it. You couldn't go on the internet and do a search for the game because it just came out, and there's no walkthroughs for it. There's no YouTube giving you detailed instructions on how to get through a zone like you guys do now, and hopefully my videos will help with that. But yeah, it was just one of those things that you just kind of had to just go off and explore. You could have been an explorer in this game. You didn't even have to be a high-level person. You could have just gone off, and because of your knowledge, made you a very valuable person. And that's cool. I like that. I've never seen that again in any other game that I've ever played, where you don't know. You just do not know what's out there. It's kind of like Skyrim. If Skyrim had done that, and Skyrim had a map, and you can go online, you could see what the map was, Yeah, and you could figure out where all the creatures were and all the quests and all that other stuff. But if it had just been completely randomized so that every playthrough was different, I think that would be a unique possibility to a game, is just to have, especially an MMO, if like every server had the zones in different places, then people would literally have to learn how to get around all over again, and what zones connected to what, and what creatures spawn in what zones. It would be a lot of the same stuff, because you'd recognize the name of the creature and be like, oh yeah, I recognize him. He's a caster, he does this stuff. He's usually in a different zone, though. I think that would be kind of fun to play if somebody could just basically hit the random button on EverQuest and jumble everything around. It would kind of give you that sense of, yeah, it's unknown, it's unique. I go into a new zone, I'm going into that new zone completely and totally oblivious to what I might actually find. I don't know, And yeah, instead of going there by yourself, some people would actually form groups and be like, let's go check out the zone, and you go there as a group of people just exploring and just killing random creatures. You're not really there for experience, you're not really there for loot, but you are kind of there for both if it happens to pop up while you're looking around. But you're just going there for your knowledge, and hopefully one day come back to it if it's a good spot to be at the appropriate level, or whether maybe you guys need more people, maybe you only have 2 or 3 and you just can't really hunt the zone very efficiently with that number. You can come back with more people, but yeah, again, you just didn't know what level that zone was going to be until you got there. And so it's kind of cool to think that people found Lower Guck by going through Upper Guck, just running around Upper Guck, killing creatures. They eventually found kind of a hole-in-the-wall area that you can go through, and boom, there's Lower Guck. And then they went through Lower Guck, and there's 2 sides to that zone, the living and the undead. And so somebody had to explore both sides and figure out where the named creatures were, and where the groups should camp, and what they should kill, and how to kill those creatures. And now a lot of you guys can just kind of absorb that information without having to go through all the trouble that some of us had to go through. But again, even though that it was trouble, and it was really kind of a hassle at times not to know where to go next, it was exciting, because again, no other game I've seen has done that. So, but one thing I kind of wanted to ask you guys before I end the video here is I want to hear your stories, for those of you who played back in the day, of your starting city, your very first character. What was the horror story with you guys? Because I've heard a lot of people have one. I know I do. I've mentioned it before in the past. I started as a Dark Elf Shadow Knight, and I was running around the Dark Elf city. For those of you who have seen my video of that city, you know it's very big and very complicated and extremely hard to find your way out of the very first time. And for a game that I didn't know anything about when I came into it, I was running around and I got frustrated. I got frustrated really, really bad. And back then, one of the things you could do was you could type out stuff to the NPCs, and if you hit the A button without actually having the chat window open, before you hit enter, it would do an auto attack on whatever you're targeting. And a lot of the times you would be targeting an NPC or a guard. You'd hit the A button by mistake, an auto attack, and he'd kill you. And that's what happened to me. I hit the A button by mistake, which auto attacked, and I died. And when I came back, I had spawned outside the town where it spawned you, that you guys have seen on my Necro and my Shadow Knight. And I didn't have any clue where my body was. What is this? I don't know what he was doing right there. But I didn't have any clue where my body was. It was a worn great staff. Hold on one second, guys. What do we want here? Incoming. Just making sure, because it went quiet here and nobody's really doing anything. Yeah, I guess they're still pulling. Okay, yeah, they're still pulling. But yeah, I had no clue where my body was or how to get it back, or even that I needed to get it back. All I knew was that it had killed me. I now was completely naked in a new part of something that I had never seen before, because I couldn't even find one zone in that area that I started, let alone know that I was in a zone, and they were broken up into pieces. So all I knew is I was in a different place with no equipment on, no idea what I was doing, and had no clue why they had killed me or what I needed to do now. And it was really, really hard, your first character, just learning all those basics and going through and making all these mistakes. But again, it's a perfect time to do it. You know, if you're going to lose your corpse, I would prefer you to lose it at level 1 and not at level 50. You know, at level 1, all you have on your corpse really is a weapon and some food and water. That's pretty much it. And if you do the quest that you start with, well, then you have a cloak or a breastplate or something like that. But I didn't do that quest because, again, no clue what I was doing, let alone how to open my inventory and how to search and read stuff on there. No clue at all, guys. I was the worst at this game you could have possibly have been when you first started. And so I had a horrible time starting. But I still loved it. I walked away that first day with a sense of accomplishment because I actually figured stuff out. I figured out how to play. I figured out how to kill. I got a few levels. And I was walking around this real creepy forest with creepy sounds, and it was amazing. It was just one of the most amazing things. It transformed or transported me to another world that I had never considered could exist. And so that's why it's one of those amazing things for me. But I want to hear your stories. I want to hear, what was yours? Was it a good reaction? Did you find your way out of the city very easily? I was talking to one guy. He said when he started, he got trapped in water. He fell into some river over in Rivervale and drowned right off the bat. He couldn't figure out how to swim because it's very difficult when you're very low on your swimming skill. You can't swim up sometimes at all, or if you do, it's very, very slow. And so for somebody who didn't even know that you needed oxygen or how to move around in water, you know, he drowned and he spawned outside. So yeah, it's definitely one of those things. But I want to hear your stories. Please leave those down in the description, and I'll go ahead and talk about a few of them, the interesting ones. Or they're gonna all be interesting, but the ones that I think are you know, more interesting and have maybe some humor to it, I'll go ahead and share those on the next episode. So again, guys, thanks for watching. If you do like these videos, please take a moment, hit the like button, subscribe. Definitely helps grow my channel, and I greatly appreciate it. Also, I want to thank you guys for all the subscribes. We're getting close to 100, and I'll do a giveaway when we get that close. So again, guys, have a great night, and I'll catch you on the next episode.